demonize women for prioritizing careers over kids until they're in their 30s. Welcome to another day of Common Sense, where we apply common sense to everyday topics. So, Jude, this is quite an interesting discussion, and I think it would be quite good to get your male perspective. So I always say, especially, I can speak specifically for my generation, and even if I'm looking at the birth rates in the UK alone, that is an indicator that that there's been a decline generally in childbirth rates. And what you see is that, I guess...
There's a solution for that.
Especially in my generation, you see women prioritizing their career over having kids. And the trend is that women are having kids much later in life, and they're prioritizing their career. And I think within certain communities, that is frowned upon. And that is, I guess, in a sense, demonized, because I know for a fact, right, that even from people make, like I always say, people make little comments. From my perspective, I mean, now I don't think they can make those comments anymore, but they'll make like little comments that, you've read all this book, like, when are you getting married? Like, in my language, you'll say, I want to wear kente, which means I want to come to a wedding, I want to do this. And I remember sitting back thinking, mate, look at all these grand accomplishments, all these things that I'm doing that I think are fantastic and it's great. And you want to talk about having kids and basically settling down. And it's almost as if all these fantastic things that you're doing, no one really cares. And it's almost as if you hit a certain age and everybody's like basically like onto you. And obviously from my perspective, and from having been on the receiving end of it, I've also sat back and I'm like, I wouldn't want to. I can't imagine having kids in my 20s. My 20s were free, reckless, and to a large extent selfish. And I don't think I would ever change my 20s. I don't regret anything I did in my 20s. I don't regret the fact that I spent my 20s focusing on myself and grafting. I can't imagine having to, quote unquote, build a home or raise kids in my 20s. And so, like, looking back now, I don't regret those decisions, neither do I regret those choices. But then also, I also don't understand how people are always so quick to be like, oh yeah, you need to have kids, you need to do this. And I'm like, they're not toys. I can't just, return them. And be like, oh, by the way...
Toys are us. This one is not working well.
I honestly, I can't be like, oh, by the way, like, this is not working for me, or this doesn't fit into my lifestyle anymore. So, like, here you go. I'm returning this package. Can't do that. So I think there is nothing wrong from my perspective in waiting until you are absolutely sure. From my perspective, I don't even think that you should have kids unless you're 100% sure that it's something that you want. Because it's such a life-changing decision, and is even more of a life-changing decision when you're a woman. And this is something that people don't want to talk about. That you are in that moment, not only do you grow this being, but then your whole life is completely changes and turn. So you're doing a complete and 180. Because you have to accommodate this new being that you've brought into the world. You need to feed it, you need to, like, they're dependent on you for everything.
But it's like that in the whole animal kingdom anyway.
And but you know what, I get the point. But I always say that when you're in a position whereby, I mean, I don't know if lions or if dogs, if they had the opportunity, or if they were as advanced as humans, and if they could have contraception and all these other things and do family planning, I'm sure they'll take up the option and the choice. I know you guys might be thinking I'm being being provocative, but
you're right. Humans do that for them. We got 2 cats that own. The female cats are both neutered.
Yeah.
Because wherever they are, human owners don't want them to have a lot of cats everywhere. They do that for pigs as well, dogs and all of that. It depends on the purpose, whether they want to groom them for something else, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's the same for humans. Humans, if you look at the old days, historical coming from the ancestry days. Women at those ages, they had children when they were 14, 15, 16, 17, even as young as 12. And I think what society need to focus on is even look at why was it possible for them to have children at that time, that age, and now it's not really, really feasible or possible. Did we go backwards in evolution, or what happened?
No, but also life expectancy changed.
Life expectancy has changed.
Yeah.
That's key, like you rightly pointed out. So when we talk about society demonizing women, I don't want to say society in general, because I'm a man. I don't demonize women for that. I've always been an advocate for women need to enjoy her life, as in chase whatever profession, live the life she want to live, and then maybe past 30s, if she starts thinking of relationship and marriages, that's when she should do it. But I don't even have a right to tell them that. It depends on the woman how they feel. And it is then dependent on the biological and the physiology of our own body. What does our body tell her? I hear women talking about body clock. I got nothing to do with that body clock. I don't know how it affects them. So it depends on them. And the biggest pressure also comes from their family. But the biggest pressure and the biggest demonizing of all of this comes from women themselves.
Yeah,
no joke.
I agree.
On this, people will say it's a man's
No, I agree.
It's matriarchal-led.
No, because
fellow women who demonize, is their sisters, their cousins.
That's facts.
It's women who tell women, have you seen your cousin, Fatima? Have you seen your friend, Sophia? Have you seen this one? Why is you're the only one remaining? You want me to die without a grandchild? This pressure mostly comes from women.
Yeah.
And the clock thing, there's the women who tell them. You think you're getting any younger? You are getting older. Look at you. Be playing. Small time now, they will remove your womb. All of these things, men are not even used to these words. It's women.
But then, saying that, I will never forget this conversation where I heard a guy tell a girl, all this shakara that you're doing, very soon, you don't know that you'd have expired.
So yes, yeah.
And that links into that same narrative.
No, fact. I was coming to that. Fact, we do that.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying the main people who demonize are women. Men do pick off, and you get those remarks from people who don't have heads on the shoulder saying, you soon expire. That's why it comes to be, it's a man's world, because nobody tells the man you soon expire. But from my experience, growing from where I grew up, men were told, you don't old finish wife, you not bring. Picking, grandpicking, you not give me. So, no joke. Our men were chased this way to get grandchildren. You're useless, you die. But the man, it's easy for him to defer those decisions because he thinks, if I'm not making money, I'm not having any family.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And that's how most men think.
But for a woman, it's the flip side, because nobody, even society, expects a woman to make money. They expect her to become the property of the man who would have made the money, and it becomes the responsibility of the man. And that's exactly where we come from. But this part of the world where we live, because of the society where we live in, the bills, the capitalist system we live in, it is expected that the two of us will work side to side. So it then becomes detrimental if you're telling a girl to put a lifestyle behind, to put a whole project and a future behind, pack it one place, come satisfy Jude and have children. Then when she should start chasing that in her 40s, when it's almost too late and they are children. You know, when it was decreed that Adam and Eve were created, it said you will be the helpmate of Adam. And that's been interpreted so many ways. Oh, you're there to just say, but for me, I just think Adam and Eve were just tools created to bring more workforce. And God gave them to enjoy each other. And in that enjoyment, there comes a means of reproduction. That's what we were created for, to reproduce. So if a woman now is not going against that because she wants to chase a career, we're not fulfilling what God put us on earth to do. This is not my saying. I'm saying how people describe this. So that's see where the demonizing comes from. You are standing in the way of God's plan.
I get that, right? And I get the fact that in terms of in the Bible, Adam and Eve were instructed to reproduce, and reproduction was also part. But then also people forget that they were also told to subdue the earth. And in terms of subduing the earth, what does the word subdue mean? Yeah,
put everything under your control, I suppose.
Exactly. So in terms of putting everything under your control, right? You then have to. It's it's incumbent on us, right, to sit down and decide whether or not this is something that is not just go and reproduce. So you also have to subdue. So you also need to think about it that it's also within your control.
It is
also
within your
something
control.
that you need to think about.
But they've misinterpreted that.
If I delay,
they've misinterpreted that to be control what is outside of us, the animals and the plants and the crops and the environment and the weather. That's what people will interpret that as. They won't interpret it as what you've done. What you're saying, I believe, is the truth.
Yeah.
It is incumbent on you to know that you have the power to delay this.
Yeah, to delay this.
It is very right for a woman to say to her mom, to her dad, to whether she had a prospective partner, look, this is not the plan. That's why I said people should talk. Unfortunately, a lot of us don't talk when we're courting, because mainly when people are courting, it's all lies flying like darts everywhere, trying to get through person's leg or trying to become that person's person. You're telling all sort of stories.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to ask the real questions.
Yeah.
These are questions we should ask each other. We're in our 20s. We're starting to see each other. What is it? What is it? And if the lady is saying to the dude, I like you and I think we got a future, but I'm not ready to have kids until I'm 33. And if the guy is saying, I can't wait, that is the door.
Of course, you find something else. Yeah.
Don't demonize the woman. She is not your property. She's told you what she wants. Bye-bye. But if you agree, then the woman should not turn again away from that decision and say, oh, no, I've changed my mind now because I heard somebody say something.
But you know what? On the flip side, right? As human beings, do we not have the ability to change our minds? I might say that I want to have kids at 25 or at 26, and I get there and I'm like, okay, actually, no, I don't want to.
No, but if you were saying that to yourself alone, it's great. But if me and you were dating and we've sat and discussed this, and you've agreed and said to me, I don't want to have any kids to 33.
Yeah.
Do you expect me to then turn around and say, no, you're 27, we must have kids now?
No.
But why would you then turn around and say, yes, Jude, I did agree to have kids by 25. Now I don't anymore. Just breaking the contract. We should end the relationship based on that.
But here's the thing, right? If I say that to you, that we agreed X and I've reached this point and perhaps I'm not ready or I don't feel like we're in a position to do so, right? As long as I've made my position clear and I've vocalized that, is that not then within like your terrain to decide whether or not this is something you want to do?
No, that's exactly what I'm saying. So you're right to change your mind. But I don't say,
at that point, when I tell you I've changed my mind, you also have the opportunity to do what you like with that.
No, I would be telling you, hang on. We did agree to go do this for 4 years, and then we'll have children. But if you're coming after the end of the 4 years and saying you're not ready yet, that's grounds for breaking up. I'm not denying that. I'm not denying that. So I'm saying we should respect all of that.
But here it's a matter of, okay, you've made your position clear.
Yeah.
Based on the position that you've put forward, I've decided to take XY decision.
Yeah.
So I can't be angry with you.
No, nobody should be angry with each other.
If you decide to say, Omar, if that's the case, well, peace out, A-Town. You know?
Because I know we're just talking about it here, but in real families, I've seen and I've heard where they say, look, babe, my mom is on my case. She wants a grandchild. And I'm my only son. I'm my only child. And you're saying this. My mom is on my case. That pressure, because they're unable to manage that pressure, which is a standard to them, it then affects the relationship and the extension. And the woman, too, can also be the one under pressure, telling the man, my parents are on my case, and you keep saying you're not ready, that children are expensive. Because that decision could be from the man as well. Children are expensive. They are very expensive. And
speaking from experience,
I had to knock it there again.
Reiterate that point.
Re-emphasize it. So they are expensive, and it was from the guy, but you're bringing pressure. And the guy said, no, I can't do this. And you go back to mom and dad and say, okay, maybe it's time to think something else, because we need a grandchild. Because we can't neglect the fact that I'm not saying our parents have a right to ask for a grandchild, but is it a duty we owe them to have children? Because I don't know. No. It's difficult. We don't owe them.
I don't think you owe them a duty. I don't think you owe anybody a duty to have children but yourself.
Well, then the world not demonize you more and say you were being selfish because your mom gave birth to you?
Yeah, because at the end of the day, you're the one that has to live with the decision of you having a child. And you're
fantastic. That's the response I was looking for.
And you're the one that has to literally uproot your life and make changes. So I think at the end of it, it does kind of have to boil down.
But what if your mom sat you down and said, sit down, let me talk to you. and your dad was there, and your dad and your mom started saying, "Ask your dad. I would have been the top surgeon general. I gave all of that up so I can have you and your brothers."
Well, that was your personal decision. I'm so sorry, right? And I know that if I ever said, here's the thing, my response would have been, "Oh, that's very nice, but that was your personal decision to make." And in this present moment,
but you can see all the scenarios and the pressure that brings.
And I'm like, in this present moment, I've decided to go for being a top surgeon, and I'm not willing to give it up for anyone. Perhaps when I'm there as a top surgeon, I can decide whether or not I want to have kids.
So you're willing to risk having rift within that side of the family?
Yes, because once again, and I'm not going to stop saying this, purely because when you have kids, especially as a woman, you have to make so many life changes and adjust your life in so many ways that is literally unimaginable, and people just expect you to do it.
There's no manual to it.
There's no manual to it. That I don't think that it's something that should be taken lightly. I don't think that you should decide to do it for anybody else. I think you do just have to sit with yourself for a moment and just weigh up. And yes, sometimes it might come in a situation where it might not be ideal.
Say you were back home in Ghana, and that's where you lived, and where we have extended relatives who helped, and you had a child at the age of 22, but you could still chase your career alongside that child because there are a lot of people there to help you babysit.
But that's different.
Would you consider a different approach to this whole question of?
I think perhaps, but in the perhaps I don't know.
So that would then say the issue here is location.
It might be a possibility.
So the issue here is one of location.
Possibly.
Then, not necessarily your body.
But that's the thing. I'm saying that perhaps I don't know. Perhaps if I knew that I can have a kid and
still pursue your career to the highest,
still do
because there's help.
Because there's help. There's somebody that's going to be there. Yeah, perhaps I'll make that decision. But once again, I'm not in Ghana. I'm in the UK. I'm looking at the reality of the UK.
Exactly.
And the fact that this is the reality of the UK, you end up in a very isolated situation, and you have to make the changes. If you don't have the support system, it can be extremely difficult. I'm not going to sit here and pretend. And even I always say it, like even the women that I know that are like I say top shots in their career and they've got kids, they always talk about the struggle of juggling both. So I don't think you can't have these people who are going through it telling you the reality of it, and then you having some sort of idealized view of how it's going to be. So I think you have to be mentally prepared. You need to have the mental fortitude to understand that, okay, if I'm deciding to make this decision, I'm going to have to do X, Y, Z, E, F, G, H, you know, and I know that I'm going to be out of work for this amount of time.
That's financial implications.
There's a financial implications, especially if your work doesn't have
I was going to come to employment.
If your work doesn't have a suitable maternity policy. At the moment, statutory maternity pays out, I think you get 6 weeks of, if you're on statutory maternity pay, you get 6 weeks, whether it's 90% of your salary or your food pay, whichever one is higher. After that 6 weeks, you're on like the stat, I think it's £184 something a week. And I always say this, imagine, right? Being in a position whereby, let's say your partner isn't active in your life or you're not together and it's just you deciding to go ahead and the state is expecting you after 6 weeks to live on £184 a week. And I don't think we're having these conversations.
No, we're not. I don't think a lot of people know about that as well.
Completely bizarre. It's like, it's so bad. So, of course, why then would you sit there and demonize women who, especially if you're knowledgeable and if you know this, and it might be that you have you're in a workplace where you have quite an attractive maternity policy. Maybe you're getting 6 months full pay and whatever else, and then the rest you're on SMP or whatever it may be. You might have quite a generous package. But the reality is that across board, especially if you're in certain job roles, you're not getting
employment.
Maternity
That leads me to the next thing I wanted to say.
Yeah.
Employment here, though, favored women who are career driven. They don't favor those who are having children, innit?
No, not really.
Yeah,
but I think it's purely because unless you're in a company which has made like the conscious decision to say that, okay, we're going to allow you flexible work and we're going to accommodate because we want an environment
there's those changes
that works
now.
because there are and trust me, I say that my current place is testament of that, where if you have the ability that you could probably still pursue your career and still also I would say be present in the home.
You grew up here, right?
Yeah, to a certain extent.
If you don't mind answering this, was there any point in your life in your 20s when your parents said, "What are you waiting for"?
No, because but once again, I also think that
they never sat you down to say, "What are you waiting for to marry or to have children"?
No, I don't think. I think probably maybe when I was getting closer to 30, they'll be like, "Oh, you should consider this. You should consider that."
Okay.
But I think prior to that, I never really had those type of conversations. But then I always say that I guess I'm also in a position where I'm privileged enough, whereby I always say both my parents are educated, so they've never really.
Do you think in this community in London, do you think there's any parents who will be pushing their children to go get into marriage and have children in their 20s? I don't think there is. You think in London, in England?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
I thought maybe it was just certain communities from back home and.
No, but remember that when you say certain communities from back home, but
they spill over here.
They spill over here. They move here.
Because I would think if
but just because.
But if the economic reality hit them, they shouldn't be pushing 22-year-old to go get into marriage because they want a grandchild. You'd be saying to them, "Mom, it is expensive. Have you heard?" And then mom will not be bothering you again.
Because I don't think I always say I don't think I ever had pressures from my.
So you're the exception to the rule, as I said. That's good to know.
No, but then also I think, but then
society does demonize. We will not
it does
trivialize that, because I see on the internet, and I was just discussing this with somebody a couple of nights ago. It is very bad, and it is the rise of the so-called misogyny and all of these idiots like Tate and the rest. Because when you go online, it's so high.
It is.
The lady is minding her business, doing her own thing, and dudes are throwing shades. Like you said, you will soon be expired. Don't go consider children. What is your business with that? Why are you telling that to the woman? Meanwhile, they're equally male who are between the ages of 40 and 70 who are useless.
And on top
and nobody's
of that,
telling them.
No, and also
go start a family, you useless man.
On top of it, something that is even wild is the fact that currently there's this huge rise of young men, one, having issues with erectile dysfunction and low sperm count and all these things, which there's been a rise in, which a lot of if you're on, they're always discussing and talking about it, how the quality of sperm is gradually reducing. You're not going to focus on that.
Because that won't be able to give a woman child,
Yeah, because obviously fertility is not, it's always, I always say when it comes down to fertility, it's always as if it's only the woman's fertility that needs to be considered, when fertility works both ways.
Yeah. So there's definitely demonization of women who choose to chase career. It's possible it's not just because of the biological side, it's because men are threatened by so-called powerful women.
Yeah.
Or educated women, or women who have the...
I think it's more to do with, I think generally it's like when you're threatened by, I always say, women who have the ability to have choices.
Yeah.
And I always say that when you're in a position where you're financially stable, what comes with that is that you're able to walk away from certain things because you have the financial capability.
So they can't control you, so therefore they hate.
Yes. So at the end of the day, if I'm a big shot and I'm earning XYZ, and like I know that if something isn't serving me, I can walk away. And I think that's also something that's an issue. And then people always feel like, okay, what is it that we can say to make somebody like feel less than, or to make them feel inadequate in some sort of way? They look at what is around you that, well, they think that at a certain age, this is what you should have attained. And yes, you might have a career, but you've kind of like missed the mark on the family.
Well, having said that, I can't say on the other, because we got to be very, how do I say, we got to be utilitarian in our approach in what we do.
Yeah.
That girl, Pearly talks and stuff, she's one who would talk to women harshly, like, or demonize women. But the women she demonizes are those ones also. It's career who's chosen a certain career before they decide to go family, but the career they've chosen is not the norm of society. So they've chosen non-conventional careers like ordinary, what's it called? Ordinary funds? Is it ordinary funds? OF. What is that?
What's OF? I
Some
don't know what OF
semi-porn thing they
Only
ordinary funds. Oh God.
Oh, Jude, please.
Ordinary fans. So
that's why I was like, which one's ordinary fans?
I'm so sorry. Only fans,
Okay.
Pornhub, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So she demonizes them a lot because a lot of them are returning her to normal life and marrying.
Yeah.
She's saying, no, you denied this when you were younger. You decided to go do that. No man should be touching you. And dudes are getting on this bandwagon. So I'm saying, will it be right to demonize those women? Because they've chosen non-conventional careers?
No.
So whether they chose that or not, it's not nice to demonize them. Either way.
From my perspective, no. Because I always say, just because I wouldn't do something, if you decide to do something and that works for you, if you feel like you can make money in unconventional means and that's something that works for you and that's suitable for you, that's between you and your God.
I said earlier somewhere, there could have been a dominatrix, but there's no money for male dominatrix. So anyhow I arrive at the money, would have been okay for me. So, yeah, it's not fair for society to continue to demonize women. I don't think any one of us have the right to do so.
Yes.
A woman is a human being, a man is a human being, just opposite versions.
Yeah.
We have our agencies. Yes, our bodies are different. Woman is the womb that carries the child, our future. I know that's why the pressure is much on them. Mm-hmm. But having said that, I still think the burden and the onus is on the woman to make that decision for themselves, not mine to make. But we can come together if we want to be in a partnership and say, this is what we want to do. Mm-hmm. And if we're not okay with that, I can walk away and say, see you later.
Yes.
And go look for somebody who can agree to my terms and conditions.
Yeah,
So for the woman.
I agree. Yeah. And on that note, see you next time.